Captain Daniel Carter sat in the command center of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, staring at the strange message on his datapad. The official seal of the Velari Dominion shimmered on the screen, followed by a short and direct message. Captain Daniel Carter, you are summoned to the Royal Palace of Velari Prime. Immediate arrival required. No delays permitted. No explanation given. Daniel frowned. The Velari were a powerful but secretive alien race. They rarely interacted with humans beyond formal diplomatic exchanges. For a human to be summoned directly to their palace was unheard of. Looks like you're in trouble, Captain, said Commander Reynolds, his second-in-command, with a smirk. Or about to walk into something big, Daniel muttered. His superiors were just as confused. No one knew why the princess of an alien empire wanted to see him. But orders were orders. Within an hour, Daniel boarded a sleek diplomatic shuttle and set course for Velari Prime. The moment he stepped off the ship, he felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes on him. The Velari Palace guards, tall and elegant with their shimmering silver armor, watched him with unreadable expressions. Their glowing violet eyes reflected curiosity and maybe suspicion. This way, Captain Carter, said one of the guards, his voice smooth but firm. Daniel followed, trying to stay calm. The palace was breathtaking. Its walls were made of translucent crystal, glowing softly from within. Floating orbs of light illuminated grand hallways, and strange holographic tapestries displayed scenes of ancient battles. But something felt wrong. The tension in the air was thick. Whispers followed him as he passed Velari nobles in flowing robes, their expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. It was clear that not everyone was happy about his presence. Finally, the guard stopped in front of massive golden doors. They opened silently, revealing the throne room. Princess Xyra stood at the center of the vast chamber. She was unlike any alien Daniel had ever seen. Her deep violet skin seemed to shimmer in the light, and her golden eyes held an intensity that made even a battle-hardened soldier like him feel unsettled. She wore an intricate gown of silver and black, and a crown-like headpiece adorned with glowing blue gems. Captain Daniel Carter, she said, her voice smooth but serious. You must be wondering why I have summoned you. Daniel nodded. The thought crossed my mind. She studied him for a moment before glancing around the room. The nobles and officials watching them closely made her hesitate. Not here, she said quietly. Then, stepping closer, she whispered just loud enough for him to hear. The fate of my people, and perhaps your own, depends on what happens next. Daniel tensed. Whatever this was, it was far bigger than he had imagined. Daniel followed Princess Xyra through a side passage, away from the watching eyes of the Velari nobles. The hallway was dimly lit, the walls made of smooth, glowing crystal. It felt strangely silent, as if the very air held its breath. Why did you bring me here? Daniel asked, keeping his voice low. Xyra didn't answer immediately. She stopped in front of a large door, placed her palm against a glowing panel, and the door slid open. Inside was a private chamber, filled with floating orbs of soft blue light. A massive window overlooked the shining city of Velari Prime, with towering spires stretching into the sky. Xyra turned to face him. You are in danger, Captain Carter. And so am I. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Danger? From whom? She hesitated. My own people. Daniel crossed his arms. I don't understand. Why summon me if it puts both of us at risk? Xyra sighed. Because I had no choice. Something terrible is coming, and you are the only one who can help me stop it. Before Daniel could respond, a loud chime echoed through the chamber. Xyra's golden eyes darkened. They know I brought you here. The doors slid open again, and a tall Velari noble stepped inside, flanked by two guards. His silver robes shimmered under the lights, and his expression was cold. Princess Xyra, he said in a formal tone. The council demands an explanation for this unauthorized meeting with a human. Xyra stood firm. I do not answer to the council, Lord Vaylor. My decisions are my own. Vaylor's eyes flickered toward Daniel, filled with disdain. A human does not belong in our palace. His presence is an insult to our traditions. Daniel could feel the tension in the air. He had been in hostile situations before, but this was different. He was surrounded by an alien court that clearly saw him as an outsider, perhaps even an enemy. Zyra's voice was sharp. Traditions will not save us from what is coming. Vaylor narrowed his eyes. You speak of shadows and riddles, princess. But I warn you, if you continue down this path, you may not have a throne to stand on. The threat was clear. The guards took a step forward, but Zyra lifted her hand, stopping them. This meeting is over, she said coldly. Vaylor glared at Daniel one last time before turning and leaving. The guards followed, but their posture made it clear that this was not the end. As soon as they were gone, Zyra exhaled. We don't have much time. You need to trust me, Captain Carter. There is a war coming, and humanity is the only hope we have. Daniel studied her carefully. He had no reason to trust her, but something in her eyes told him she was telling the truth. Then start talking, he said. What exactly are we up against? Princess Zyra led Daniel through another set of hidden corridors, moving quickly. The air was thick with tension. Something was clearly wrong, and Daniel could feel it. You still haven't told me what's coming, Daniel said, keeping pace beside her. Zyra glanced at him. Not here. Too many ears. Daniel didn't like the sound of that. He had been in enough dangerous situations to know when he was being hunted. And right now, the way Zyra moved, the way she kept looking over her shoulder, told him that they were not safe. They entered a circular chamber with high walls made of shimmering blue crystal. A single long table stood in the center, covered in holographic maps and old scrolls. It looked like a war room. Zyra pressed a button on the table, and a hologram flickered to life. It showed a dark mass moving toward the Vaylari star systems. This, she said, pointing at the projection, is the XL-FAR fleet. Machines. Unstoppable. They have already destroyed 3 civilizations beyond the galactic rim. We are next. Daniel frowned. He had heard rumors of an unknown enemy attacking outer colonies, but no one had confirmed it. Why call me? He asked. Your people have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Why not fight them yourselves? Zyra looked at him, her golden eyes filled with something close to desperation. Because we fought them before, and we barely survived. Before Daniel could respond, a sharp noise echoed through the chamber. A small metallic sphere rolled across the floor, right toward them. His instincts screamed. Down. Daniel tackled Zyra just as the device exploded, sending a shockwave of energy through the room. The blast was strong but not lethal, stunning energy. Assassins. Through the ringing in his ears, Daniel saw figures in dark armor drop from the ceiling, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. They moved fast, too fast for ordinary soldiers. Daniel rolled to his feet, grabbing a fallen Vaylari guard's blade. It wasn't his usual weapon, but it would do. The first assassin lunged at him. Daniel sidestepped and drove the blade into the attacker's side. The assassin collapsed, but more were coming. Zyra wasn't helpless either. She grabbed a weapon from the table and fired a pulse shot, taking down another assassin. Stay close, Daniel ordered, blocking another strike. His human strength and combat instincts gave him an advantage. The assassins were skilled, but he fought like a soldier trained for war. One by one, they fell, until only one remained. Realizing the fight was lost, the last assassin activated a device on his wrist and vanished in a shimmer of light. A teleport escape. Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. That was an execution squad. Zyra nodded, breathing heavily. And now you see why I needed you. Daniel looked at her. If her own people wanted her dead, this was worse than he thought. Daniel stood in the ruined chamber, catching his breath. The scent of burnt metal filled the air. The assassins were gone, but their message was clear. Someone wanted Syra dead. Syra leaned against the table, her golden eyes filled with anger. "They will try again," she said. "And next time, they won't fail." Daniel frowned. "Your own people are trying to kill you. Why?" She hesitated for a moment, then pressed a hidden panel on the wall. The crystal surface shifted, revealing a hidden staircase leading downward. "Come," she said. "I will show you." Daniel followed her down the narrow steps, his hand resting near the hilt of the blade he had taken. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Finally, they'd reached a massive underground chamber. In the center of the room stood a towering monolith covered in ancient symbols. It pulsed with a faint, eerie light. Zara approached it, placing her hand on the surface. "This is the prophecy stone. It is older than my people, older than the Dominion itself." Daniel crossed his arms. A prophecy. He had never put much faith in such things. Tahira's voice was solemn. "It speaks of a great war. A force from the darkness will rise, consuming everything in its path. The Dominion will fall, and only a warrior born of iron and fire, not of the stars, can stop it." She turned to look at him. "That warrior is you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Me?" He almost laughed. "I think you have the wrong guy." Zara shook her head. "No, you are human. Your kind was not born among the stars like mine. You come from a world of iron and fire, Earth. The prophecy speaks of you." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This was insane. He was a soldier, not some chosen savior. "Even if I believed this, why would your people want to kill you for it?" Zyra's expression darkened. "Because they are afraid. The Council does not want to accept that we cannot win this war alone. They see me as a traitor for believing in the prophecy, and they see you as a threat to our traditions." Daniel sighed. "Let me get this straight. You're telling me that an unstoppable machine army is coming to wipe out your entire civilization, and instead of preparing for war, your own leaders are trying to kill the one person who might help." Zyra gave a sad smile. "Politics." Daniel shook his head. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Zyra stepped closer. "Will you help me, Captain Carter?" Daniel looked at the pulsing monolith, then back at the princess. He didn't believe in prophecies, but he did believe in survival. He exhaled. "I'm in." Zyra nodded. "Then we must move quickly. The HFY are coming." Daniel followed Princess Zyra through another hidden passage beneath the palace. The air was cold, and the walls pulsed with a faint blue glow. It felt ancient, untouched for centuries. "Where are we going?" he asked, gripping the hilt of his borrowed blade. Zyra glanced at him. "To the Vault of the Forgotten. It holds the last records of our war with the HFY. The Council sealed it long ago, afraid of what it contained." Daniel frowned. "Why would they hide information that could help you fight?" Zyra's voice was bitter. "Because the truth is dangerous. The Council would rather die believing in their own strength than accept that we are not invincible." They reached a massive doorway covered in glowing symbols. Zyra placed her hand on the center, and the symbols flickered before the doors groaned open. Inside, the chamber was filled with towering shelves of old scrolls, stone tablets, and ancient data cubes. A massive circular table in the center projected a hologram of the galaxy, marked with countless red dots. Zyra activated one of the devices, and a recording played. A Velari scholar, his face grim, spoke in the old language. Zyra translated. "The HFY do not conquer. They consume. Every world they take, they strip of all life and technology, absorbing it into their endless machine network." The hologram changed, showing a planet turning dark as mechanical structures spread like a virus. The image made Daniel's stomach tighten. Zyra continued. "Thousands of years ago, we fought them with all our power. We won, but only because of a terrible sacrifice." Daniel leaned forward. "What sacrifice?" Sarah hesitated, then activated another recording. This time, it showed a fleet of Valari ships surrounding a massive energy field. Inside the field was something horrifying. A living star, burning with unnatural energy. Zyra's voice was barely a whisper. We created a superweapon, a dying star filled with unstable energy. We lured the HFY fleet into the trap and detonated it. Daniel's eyes widened. You blew up a star. She nodded. It destroyed them, but also wiped out 3 of our own worlds. The cost was unbearable. The Council swore never to use such a weapon again, and they erased all records of the war. Daniel let out a slow breath. And now the machines are back. Zyra looked at him, her golden eyes filled with urgency. We cannot use that weapon again. But there is another way. Daniel crossed his arms. Let me guess. This is the part where I come in. Zyra gave a small smile. Yes, the prophecy spoke of a warrior born of iron and fire, a human. You are unpredictable, adaptive, and unlike anything the HFY have ever faced. Daniel exhaled. He wasn't sure he believed in ancient prophecies, but he knew one thing for certain. If the HFY weren't stopped, there wouldn't be a galaxy left to save. All right, he said. What's the plan? Zyra closed the hologram, her expression serious. The Council will never agree to fight alongside humans. They still believe they can negotiate with the HFY. Daniel scoffed. Negotiate? With a machine army that destroys everything in its path. She nodded grimly. It is their greatest weakness. Pride. They think they can control the war. But they do not understand what we are truly facing. Daniel sighed. Then we don't have time to convince them. What's our next move? Zyra moved to another console and activated a new hologram. This time, it showed a massive station orbiting a dead star. This is the Black Archive, a secret research facility. It holds forbidden knowledge, technology that was hidden after the last war. If we can access it, we may find a way to stop the HFY. Daniel studied the hologram. Let me guess, the Council doesn't want anyone going there. Zyra gave a small, humorless smile. Exactly. Entering the Black Archive is punishable by death. Daniel exhaled. Of course it is. Before he could say more, the chamber suddenly shook. A deep rumble echoed through the underground vault. Dust fell from the ceiling. Zyra's eyes widened. They found us. Daniel drew his blade. Not the machines, right? Zyra shook her head. No, my own people. The vault doors exploded inward, and Valari guards stormed in, their weapons glowing with energy. Leading them was Lord Valar, his silver robes flowing as he stepped forward. You disappoint me, princess, Valar said coldly. You bring a human into our sacred halls. You break our most ancient laws. You seek knowledge that was forbidden for a reason. Zyra stood firm. If we do nothing, our people will die. Valar's expression didn't change. Better to die as Valari than to survive as cowards. Daniel rolled his eyes. I've heard a lot of stupid things in my life, but that takes the prize. Valar's gaze snapped to him. You have no place in our affairs, human. Daniel smirked. Funny. Your princess seems to think I do. Valar's eyes darkened. Enough. Surrender, and perhaps the Council will show mercy. Zyra lifted her chin. I choose to fight. With that, she raised her hand and unleashed a pulse of energy. The blast sent several guards flying backward. The rest charged. Daniel moved fast, blocking an energy blade with his own. The force of the impact sent vibrations up his arm, but he held firm. He sidestepped an attack and knocked a guard unconscious with the hilt of his weapon. Zyra moved like a storm, her attacks swift and precise. But they were outnumbered. More guards poured in. Daniel gritted his teeth. We need an exit now. Zyra pressed a hidden panel on the wall. A section of the floor shifted, revealing an escape tunnel. This way, she shouted. Daniel slashed through another guard and sprinted after her. They had no choice. Now, they were fugitives. Daniel and Sarah sprinted through the narrow tunnel as alarms blared behind them. The palace guards were in pursuit, their voices echoing through the passage. "We won't outrun them forever," Daniel said, gripping his stolen blade tightly. Zira pressed a button on her wrist device. "We don't need to." I called for a ship. The tunnel opened into a hidden hangar. A sleek Velarri starfighter sat waiting, its engines humming softly. Daniel let out a breath of relief. "I like the way you plan ahead," he said. Zira smirked. "It's a survival skill." Behind them, the guards burst into the chamber. "There they are. Stop them." Valar's voice rang out. Daniel and Sarah sprinted for the ship. Energy blasts shot past them, hitting the walls and floor. Daniel ducked, spun around, and threw a small explosive he had taken from one of the fallen guards earlier. It detonated in a bright flash, buying them precious seconds. They leaped into the cockpit. Zira took the pilot's seat, while Daniel strapped himself in beside her. "Hold on," she warned. The ship roared to life, lifting off just as the guards fired another volley of shots. The hangar doors were sealed, but Sarah slammed a control lever, overriding the security lock. The massive doors groaned open. Valar's furious face appeared on the communication screen. "Princess, you cannot escape your fate." Zira's voice was ice. "Watch me." She punched the thrusters. The ship blasted forward, rocketing into the night sky. The sudden force pressed Daniel back into his seat. Behind them, palace defense ships scrambled to launch in pursuit. "They're sending fighters," Daniel shouted. "I see them," Zira replied. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, weaving the ship through the city's towering spires. "But they won't catch us." Daniel glanced at the radar. "I hate to disagree, but they're gaining." Zira smirked. "Then let's even the odds." She flipped a switch, and the ship's wings glowed with energy. A cluster of drones detached from the hull and shot backward. The pursuing fighters hesitated for a second too long, just enough time for the drones to explode, sending a wave of fire through the enemy ships. Daniel let out a whistle. "Remind me not to play cards with you." The ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, escaping into the vastness of space. The enemy fighters, bound by palace orders, did not follow them beyond Velarri airspace. Daniel exhaled. "We made it. Now what?" Zira's expression turned serious. "Now we head to the Black Archive. The answers we need are there." Daniel nodded. "Then let's find out how to stop these machines before it's too late." As the ship jumped into hyperspace, he had a feeling that the real fight was only just beginning. "You said." The ship burst out of hyperspace, emerging near a dark, lifeless star. Floating in its shadow was the Black Archive, a massive station, old and covered in layers of forgotten history. It had no lights, no signals. It was as if the universe had abandoned it. Daniel stared at the station from the cockpit. "Looks friendly." Zira adjusted the controls. The council erased its existence from all records. Only a few know how to get here. Daniel exhaled. "And you're one of them." She gave a small smirk. "I know a lot of things the council wishes I didn't." The ship glided toward the station's entrance. As they got closer, automated defenses flickered to life, old but still deadly. Turrets powered up, locking onto them. "Zira," Daniel said. "I see it," she replied, quickly pressing buttons. "Hang on." She sent a coded signal, and for a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, the turrets powered down. The entrance gate groaned open, revealing a dark tunnel leading inside. Daniel shook his head. "You really like breaking into places, don't you?" Zira smiled. "Only when necessary." They landed inside a vast hangar, empty except for long-dead ships. The air smelled of dust and old metal. Daniel stepped out, gripping his weapon. "So what are we looking for?" Zira led the way toward a control terminal, the last records of the Sci-Fi War. the knowledge of how we fought them, and how we stopped them. She activated the terminal. The room flickered with dim, golden light as ancient holograms came to life. A deep voice filled the chamber, old and weary. Final log of High Scholar Nifar. If you are hearing this, then the council has failed, and the HFY have returned. Daniel and Sarah exchanged a glance. The recording continued. We were fools to believe we could defeat them completely. The machines are patient. They waited, learning, adapting. And now they come for us again. The hologram shifted, showing schematics of an ancient weapon. It looked like a massive energy core, unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Zyra's eyes widened. The Starforged core. I thought it was a myth. Daniel frowned. What is it? Zyra's voice was filled with awe. Not a weapon. A key. It's the only thing that can disrupt the HFY's network, shut them down permanently. The recording continued. The core was hidden on a distant world, far beyond our borders. If it is not found, the galaxy is lost. The hologram flickered and died. Silence filled the room. Daniel clenched his fists. Then we find it. Zyra nodded. Before the machines do. The Black Archive had given them the answer. Now, they just had to survive long enough to reach it. The Black Archive's ancient lights flickered as Daniel and Sarah stood in silence. The weight of the revelation settled between them. The Starforged core was their only hope, but they weren't the only ones looking for it. Daniel turned to Zyra. Do you know where this distant world is? Zyra studied the faded hologram, her golden eyes scanning the ancient symbols. Yes, but it's deep in uncharted space. The journey alone could be dangerous. Daniel smirked. Dangerous is starting to feel normal. Before Zyra could reply, alarms blared through the station. The walls trembled as distant explosions echoed through the halls. Daniel drew his weapon. Tell me that's just an old system malfunction. Zyra's expression darkened. No, we're not alone. The station's sensors flickered to life, revealing a fleet of shadowy ships approaching from the void. Zyra's hands flew over the controls. The HFY found us, she whispered. A mechanical voice echoed through the speakers, cold and emotionless. Flesh is obsolete. Surrender the knowledge, and your end will be swift. Daniel clenched his jaw. I hate these guys. The station trembled as enemy boarding pods slammed into its exterior. The HFY were coming in. Zyra grabbed his arm. We need to move. Now. They sprinted back toward their ship as metal shrieks echoed through the corridors. Behind them, the walls cracked open, and HFY drones poured through. Their metallic limbs glowed with eerie blue energy, their sharp fingers twitching as they scanned the intruders. Daniel fired first, his plasma shots ripping through the closest drones. Zyra moved swiftly, slicing through enemies with a blade of pure energy. But for every drone they destroyed, more emerged. They're endless, Daniel shouted. Zyra hit a control panel as they ran. Not for long. A massive explosion ripped through the halls, sealing the path behind them. The Black Archive was ancient, but its power cores were still active. They reached the ship and jumped into the cockpit. Zyra powered up the thrusters as Daniel manned the weapons. Outside, the HFY fleet loomed, blocking their escape. Any bright ideas? Daniel asked. Zyra's hands flew over the controls. Just one. She overloaded the Archive's power core. A surge of energy rippled outward, sending a shockwave through space. The HFY ships closest to the station were fried instantly. Zyra didn't wait. She punched the thrusters, launching them through the chaos as explosions consumed the Archive behind them. Daniel exhaled as the ship entered hyperspace. That was close. Zyra didn't smile. Her gaze was fixed on the stars ahead. The war has already begun. If we don't reach the core first. Daniel nodded. Then we make sure we do. The final battle was coming. And they were running out of time. The ship shot out of hyperspace, arriving at a lonely planet orbiting a dying sun. It was barren, covered in jagged mountains and endless deserts. But deep within, hidden for centuries, was the starforged core, the only thing that could stop the HFY forever. Daniel studied the readings. This place looks dead. Zira adjusted the controls. Let's hope it isn't. As they descended, alarms blared. The HFY had beaten them here. Massive war machines moved across the surface, drilling into the planet's crust. Hovering above them was a HFY command ship, its cold, mechanical form pulsing with blue energy. Daniel clenched his fists. They're digging for it. Zyra's eyes burned with determination. Then we stopped them. She landed behind a ridge, away from enemy scanners. The moment they stepped out, the air felt heavy with static. The ground pulsed faintly beneath their feet. Daniel gripped his weapon. This planet is alive. Zyra nodded. The core isn't just a machine. It was built with living energy. That's why the HFY want it. If they corrupt it, nothing can stop them. A distant explosion shook the ground. The machines were getting closer. Daniel exhaled. Then we go loud. They charged down the ridge, firing at the enemy machines. Explosions rocked the battlefield as Zyra's energy blade sliced through drones, and Daniel's precise shots took down key targets. But the HFY were endless. A deep metallic voice thundered from the command ship. Flesh cannot change fate. Surrender. Daniel smirked. Not today. Zyra placed a hand on the ground, closing her eyes. The planet trembled, and a massive stone door opened beneath them. The core is below, she shouted. They sprinted inside as the HFY followed. The tunnels pulsed with golden light, leading them to a vast underground chamber. Floating at its center was the starforged core, a swirling mass of energy, ancient yet powerful. But standing in their way was a massive HFY warform, a towering machine made of shifting metal. Daniel raised his weapon. I hate boss fights. The warform lunged, its blades slicing through the air. Daniel dodged, firing at its joints, while Zyra leaped onto its back, stabbing her blade into its core. The machine roared, sparks flying as it collapsed. Zyra rushed to the core's control panel. I can activate it, but I need time. Daniel turned as more drones poured in. I'll hold them off. He fought fiercely, taking down wave after wave. But they kept coming. Then, the core flared with light. A pulse of golden energy rippled across the planet, shutting down every HFY instantly. The war machines crumbled. The sky turned silent. Zyra fell back, exhausted. It's over. Daniel exhaled. We won. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free.